Howdy YouTube, and welcome to another episode of the Gunman. So today we've got a familiar car to the regulars of the channel, and that is Nick's Subaru WRX with the candy over Flakes job that we did, probably 2 or 3 years ago. So somebody decided to go and run the red light on one of those little e-scooters, smashing into Nick, and luckily he had his dash cam footage for evidence that it was not his fault. He did not run the red light, the other person did. So either way, all of that aside, it's our job to fix it. So the first thing that we had to do was strip all the paint back, right? So because last time we painted it, I checked it with the micrometer, and it was about 700 to 800 microns, most of the car, right? So that's a lot of paint on there. Look, you've got to do what you've got to do when you're painting this kind of color, and the conventional rules obviously do go out the window. So as you can see there, we've stripped pretty much everything. Everything that we're painting had to get stripped back to bare metal so that we didn't have like stupidly massive amounts of paint that would obviously chip and stuff like that. And as it turns out, even last time we did have some blistering and sort of I guess you'd call, around the bonnet scoop there. Like it just happens. It's just one of those things that happens on these kind of jobs. Unfortunately, when you've got that much material on the panels, it just happens. So that's, I guess, one of the positive sides to this repair happening. We got to strip that bonnet back and start again. So either way, we, like I said, the first thing that you may have seen me put down, that was an epoxy primer. So I do quite like the PPG primers. And that was the DP616, a Deltron primer. I then went down with the 219 as a primer surfacer. We then did the repairs, blocked it all down. We actually, you may have also noticed that we got the epoxy primer down before the panel beater came down and did the repairs. So he actually did grind my primer off and then do the dent pulling. So you may have noticed like, oh, why didn't you do the dent pulling first? And again, it was just so that we could take all of the paint off so that he wasn't working around all of that unnecessarily thick paint. And sometimes it just makes sense, you know what it is? Like, that's another thing that I'd like to quickly mention is that some people over the years, they'll sit there and criticize your procedure, and it's like, you're not in that shop. You don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. You don't know that potentially I've got like, 10 jobs on the go, for instance. And it just makes sense sometimes to do things a different way, even though you may know it's not the most efficient way, but it actually is if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture of the entire shop, right? And it's like, hey, I've got a little bit of time to kill. I'm just gonna get these panels stripped down, get them into some primer, and okay, it may be better to do it a slightly different way. But yeah, just wanted to quickly mention that. Either way, once I got all the panels primed up, blocked down, obviously got it into the dark primer. That was to help the black cover. And then it turns out I only needed 2 coats of black. So that was solvent-based Deltron again, solvent-based black. And what I'm doing now is putting the flakes down. So that's Hollywood Candy and Flakes at 0.15 micron flakes here. I've then put that with some color blender. That's the Deltron color blender. D895 from memory. You'll see it come up on screen in a minute.
Yeah! Woohoo! Look at those flakes just bouncing all over the place. I love it. Just gotta make sure we get enough of them on. It's quite a heavy flake. I'm slowing down a little bit on this one just to make sure I get a nice amount on. And then it's just 10% flake. I'll probably go 500. Keep it all simple, even numbers. 4, 500.
So this is one thing that I did a little bit different this time compared to last time. Now what I found last time, I was getting a phenomena called flake pull. I coined the term flake pull. So what'll happen is you'll do your best to bury all of these flakes, and what happens is the flakes will sort of like stack on top of each other. So when you go to do your final flow coat, you've sanded it down and you've actually cut through to some of the flakes, and then it'll look like a sort of silicon spot where the clear will sort of pull down. It's actually not silicon, it's where the flake has sort of pulled the clear down, and you've basically made a little crater there. So that was a basic idea of what you saw me doing previously. I thought I'd start off with the tack rag. So tack rag's obviously going to be a little bit softer than the Scotch-Brite pad, which you saw me using after. And look, ultimately, I think it probably helped, but I don't think it did really exactly what I was hoping it to do. There was still a lot of flake stack and still a lot of flake pull. At the end of the day, it's just something that's going to happen unless you guys know a way to sort of stop that. And on the other hand, like, you don't know, like, you might have done, say, 1 or 2 single panels, or even say a surfboard or a skateboard, and you're like, oh, I never got flake pull. Do a respray, man. Do a respray on a car and come back to me. Please do, okay? Yeah, doing a full respray is definitely a different beast than doing like a small little custom project. Trust me, I learned that one the hard way. The first time I was like, what's going on? I thought they were silicone, and it didn't. It took me a little while to realize what had actually happened. But either way, the clear that I'm using is the PPG, another Dultron product, and that is the DC527. So that's a sprint clear. So it is a little bit different than what I did last time. So just to be very perfectly clear, last time I painted this car, I did a full respray on it. Then somebody obviously decided to ride out in front of him. Now we've got to try and replicate. So it's kind of a little bit more difficult to try and replicate this kind of a color than your average color, and that's mainly because of the flake. The candy side of it is actually surprisingly simple. What I've found with candy, once you get above that sort of 3 to 4 coats, it doesn't change much, right? So candies are a dye, for those of you who do not know. It is not a pigment, it's not a normal color, right? So candy is always going to be transparent. You could put 100 coats on, right? It may actually start deepening the color up at that level, but like I say, once you get past 3 coats of candy, I've found the color pretty much stays the same, right? The redness to the candy, it pretty much stays the same. So yeah, that's not necessarily the hard part. The hard part, I guess, is just replicating the amount of flake. So, and I think I did pretty well. It's not 100% perfect. You'll see it out in the sun in a few minutes, but for the kind of color, I'd say it's definitely a pass. Now, as it turned out, the first time we painted it, it was a little bit pale, and I wasn't too worried. I knew that I was going to be able to have the opportunity to put more candy on, and I knew I was going to have to put more candy on, right? Because the way I see it, right, you get your flakes down, and then the flakes are essentially like just throwing dirt all over the car. That's what it's basically like. They've got a very big profile to them. So what we've got to try and do next is obviously just fill them in. We just got to bury them. Look at that. It looks terrible, right? And like I say, if you look at the color to the boot lid, it's a bit pale. But again, I didn't mind. And the way I see it, right, is you're gonna have to fill those flakes up no matter which way you look at it. You may as well get some candy down just to help that, right? But you don't want to be sanding the candy down. If you do cut through a little bit, it's not the end of the world. So what I did, 3 coats of candy, 2 coats of normal clear, bake it, and I was actually baking in between coats as well. So I was giving it sort of a few minutes in between coats. Now, because it's a sprint clear and I used the fast thinner, I didn't have to give them mega long bakes. And again, you don't want to bake for too long. All these little things that I'm talking about are actually important. If you were to bake a sprint clear in the booth that I'm using for 15-20 minutes, you could potentially go outside of your recoat window, right? So I think a lot of people just take everything as if read the data sheet. No, look, the reality of the world is not a data sheet. There's a window, and it's a tack window, right? I'll know by touching the clear coat next to the panel that I've painted on say the masking. I'll know if it's ready or not, and I'll know if it's gone too far. So you really don't want to go too far. Obviously, you don't want to go too short because you can trap the solvents in, and so you've just got that the ideal window, and depending on the clear coats you're using, the thinners that you're using, the spray booth that you're using as well, the temperature of the day, there's lots of variables. So don't just be a sheep that just follows exactly what either a paint rep or a piece of paper says. You've got to be adaptable and know what you're on about, so to speak. But either way, you're definitely going to cut through to some of those flakes that have stacked. It's just going to happen, as I said before. Part of the nature of the beast. So we sand it down, we take it in for the first flow coat. Now, I always knew that this was not going to be the last flow coat, but the way I see it, it can't hurt to just start burying those flakes as start getting some of that candy on to build the layers up, right?
That looks killer. Love that. Love that color.
Now, what I'm doing here is because I no longer have to absolutely bury those flakes. Most of the burying has been done. So what I've actually decided to do here was put the candy in with some intercoat, so it's a lot thinner, and essentially all that intercoat was the D895, and it's just base coat. It's got no color in it. And you may have noticed that when I was putting it in with the flakes, it's clear, like it's a true clear intercoat. And I say that because I think it was the Glazeret and even the Standox solvent-based intercoat, they did have a little hint of yellow. So I would actually much prefer this PPG intercoat if I was doing custom colors, because you don't lose any of the clarity of the color that you want. Now, the previous time when I did this full respray, I was expecting the first flow coat to be the last flow coat, but like I say, I didn't quite expect the flake pull to happen, and especially on that scale. So this time, I knew this was not going to be the final product, right? So what I did, sanded it down, of course, put those 2 coats of candy on just to build that candy back up, and then I put another couple of coats of the Sprint Clear. If I was expecting this to be the last layer, I would have been using the 105 clear, and mainly just because that's the clear that I used on it last time, just to keep it consistent. But I did decide to use the Sprint Clear for the first flow coat. And then another thing that I did just to sort of help, so one other thing that happens with these kinds of jobs is over time, the clear is going to continue to move. So the reason I use that Sprint Clear, another reason was to just help the drying procedure. I wanted it to potentially shrink back as little as possible, right? So another thing I did, and this is even before this stage here, I baked the living hell out of it, right? And then I opened it up with 500 grit, and then I put it back in the booth for another hour's bake. I got the heat lights onto it just to sort of help that drying procedure. And this is the flake pull that I was talking about. I think maybe not quite as bad as last time. Potentially the tack ragging and the Scotch Brite pads may have helped a little bit. But look, it's still there. But as I say, I knew it was coming. I was expecting it. So it wasn't a surprise this time, which, yeah, surprises are never really good when you're spray painting. You just want everything to go as planned. But hey, stuff can always happen. But either way, so this is it after its first flow coat out in the sun. Happy with the color. It's definitely deepened that color up with those extra couple of coats of candy. As you can see here, the color on the boot lid is definitely a pass, especially with this kind of a color. But at the end of the day, what I said to the owner is, I said, man, all I can do is put the paint down. Like, that's all I can really do. There's not much else I can do. And if it comes out perfect, awesome. If it comes out a little bit out, it's just one of those things, man. You're just going to have to live with it. So he did come out and he sort of signed off on the color, and he's realistic about it. He's not expecting us to work miracles. But you may have even noticed what actually happened is there was a few stray flakes, right? So this was not flake pull. It was actually stray flakes, because I knew my prep work was perfect. It would have been potentially a flake coming off me, off my gloves, off my gun, off the booth. If you've ever done a respray on a flake job, you'll know exactly what I mean. Even smaller jobs, the whole shop just gets bombed with flakes, right? So what happened this time, I wasn't actually expecting to have to put more candy down. Luckily, I had plenty more where that came from, and I think we still have another bottle or 2 spare. But yeah, it was just stray flakes. So I just thought, look, knowing and what I said before, more candy doesn't exactly change the color. And I think it's actually a good thing, because it is a dye. What happens with candies in the sun, the dye will just fade really bad. So the way I say it, more candy the better. It's going to last a little bit longer in the sun, and yeah, it's not going to do any harm anyway. You may have noticed that I've gone and changed my gun. At this point, I was having a big love affair with the Supernova, and I still do absolutely love this gun. I don't use it as much as I used to, but yeah, absolutely brilliant gun, especially for the 105 clear. It's probably the best gun to get the 105 clear down flat. And I've been meaning to do an updated review on it, because I have recently found some amazing settings on this gun to just make it easy. I've been critical, like I've always had this love-hate relationship with the Supernova. and I accidentally stumbled across some settings that were a godsend, and it totally changed the way that I approach this gun. And it's settings that I never would have expected, especially going on past performance. So yeah, I'll definitely get a little bit deeper into that. But look, just quickly for you guys, it's full fan, full fluid, and 2-bar pressure. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't know why I went down this rabbit hole of thinking you had to get all tricky and finicky with the settings on that gun. You don't. Just spray it like a Vilbus, and it makes it so much easier. The fan, now this is actually what gets you, right? It doesn't quite look right. When you look at it on the side, it looks heavy top and bottom, but there must just be something about it that it evens out over the overlap or something like that. So look, I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but I know what works, and it just works amazingly. Full fan, full fluid, 2-bar pressure, and it makes it so much easier. Like I say, it looks top and bottom heavy, but it must just even out, and it actually kind of softens the fan, right? So previously, when you wind it in, I used to wind that fan in, it made the edges it made them look right to the eye, but it actually made them really hard. As soon as you sort of tilt the gun, you would get runs really easy. Anyway, I've got to stop myself from going off on another tangent. So just to be clear, this last bit at the end, this is footage off my phone. So you may notice that the color sort of changes a little bit. I think this is actually more what I see. For whatever reason, the GoPro that I use for most of the video, it does sort of change the color. But like I said, I don't know exactly why. But what an amazing color. I should have got some after footage, but I was digging through my footage and I don't seem to have any. So but what I did find after doing all the editing is some footage that I caught on my phone. I must have had my phone sitting in the corner of the booth, and I do actually have some sort of third-person view footage. So I'm going to be doing another video on this, and I've got the next week off, so yeah, I'll be able to edit up heaps of videos for you guys. And yeah, if you're wondering why I've been a little bit sort of shy on the content, sort of on and off lately, it's just because I've been getting exhausted, right? I'm a high energy type spray painter, and sometimes I just give it my all at work, and by the time you come home, you just need to sit down, relax, and yeah, just switch off and sort of play some video games or watch a movie or whatever it may be. Believe it or not, it does actually take a fair bit of mental energy to make all these videos. You've got to do all the planning and put all the timelines together and yeah, come up with stuff to say. But either way, just at the end of this video, I'll give you a little bit of a preview of the kind of footage that we've got coming up for the next videos. I'd just like to say a big thanks to Nick, the owner of this car. He's a good dude and a legend. If you go out to some of the Melbourne car shows, you may know him, and you'll probably be able to go and see this car. He's pretty active in the car scene in Melbourne. Another one I'd like to say is big thanks to Spray Guns Direct for sponsoring the show, as they always do. And yeah, Hollywood Candy and Flakes, you'll be able to get it from them exclusively, I believe. And any spray guns that you want, be sure to go over and check out their website, spraygunsdirect.co.uk. And if you want a free spray gun cleaning kit, just send them an email when you buy any spray gun. Tell them that the Gunman sent you and that you would like the free spray gun cleaning kit. Anyway, until next time, get out there and paint some shit. Gunman out.